They never liked him when I was dating him. They
Oh.
were mad about the engagement.
Uh-oh.
They were like kind of resigned to the marriage. And it was like, I kept trying to feel like I had to prove like, no, like I married the right person. I don't regret this. This is good. You just need to see that part of him. And then sometimes he'd say things and I'm like, it's not going to help me out. So
I don't take crap from anybody, and that leads to a lot of things being said between the mother-in-law's involvement in the marriage as well as hurtful things being said. Basically, we needed some sort of intervention.
In communication, it's very important to understand it does not matter what you intended or meant or thought you said. The real meaning of your communication is what is received. So welcome to another episode of Julie 911. Today we have Caleb and Haley joining us, who are going to be teeing up an issue or a problem they'd like to solve. And I can't imagine what it is, and I can't wait to hear it. But before we do that, why don't you start by telling us your situation, how long you've been married, and all that kind of stuff.
So we've been together since 2016 and married since 2018. We have a 2-year-old and one on the way.
Which is due when?
July. She's
So,
coming in July.
It's a she, we know that. Does she have a name?
That's one thing we can't quite agree on.
Uh-oh.
So we've been running it by our 2-year-old, what he thinks of the names.
Oh.
And so far, and if he has any names, and so far he's come up with baby sister.
Well, not unreasonable, but probably not good for the invitation on the wedding.
Probably not. Baby sister.
Although that might be kind of cute. All right, so this is coming up almost in March, so we're 4 months away.
4 months, yeah. So I'm 5 months along. And we do the ultrasound next week, so.
Lovely. Very nice. And he's excited about being a big brother?
He doesn't quite get it. I've touched my belly and I'm like, oh, your baby sister's inside. And then he's touched his belly after a meal and he's like, baby sister, Jace's baby sister.
Because sometimes it feels like that, doesn't it?
And then he's touched Caleb's stomach like baby sister. And we have to explain it. Just the mom has
just the mommy's tummy. Okay. Yes, that's true. All right. So we have one and one on the way. And you've been married since 2018. Now, what developed since 2018 until somebody picked up the phone? What was going on?
I mean, we were living in another state. We were doing long distance. We've been long distance for 5 years of our marriage because he was in the military. So he was commuting.
3 years of the marriage plus 2 years of dating.
Yes. So he was commuting for 5 years. So that was a little rough, seeing him on weekends and occasionally when he had a longer break. We were doing independent businesses right before we ended up moving out here. I was a little burnt out with my business, and he's like, Pensacola is hiring. This is what they're paying. I think this is a possibility. He had brought me out here for our honeymoon.
Oh.
So yeah, so that's a good introduction to the place. And I kind of on a whim just started calling up places, got several interviews and ended up picking a place where I'm really happy with. So
nice.
That was a good move professionally for me. And then we've been out here almost 4 years, I think, in June.
Mm-hmm. So from your perspective, what was going on that made somebody pick up a phone?
It was really a lot of the mother-in-law's involvement. Now, I am most certainly at fault for a lot of it. I don't take crap from anybody, and that leads to a lot of things being said. Also, I definitely speak a lot faster than I think at times, and that leads to hurtful things being said that were not intended. And so the two things basically mesh together, and between the mother-in-law's involvement in the marriage as well as hurtful things being said, basically we needed some sort of intervention, and that's whenever Haley decided to pick up the phone and give you a call.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that's accurate from your perspective, Haley? That's how you were feeling?
Yeah, it was literally right after my mom had come to visit, and I was like, we need to do something.
Okay. So then you picked up the phone, you came in, we had a nice chat, I remember. Tell the folks watching what that experience was like for you. I'll start with you and then I'll ask.
It was like being pinned for everything and all your personality. Not, I don't want to say faults, but like I think you had us nailed.
Patterns. Yes.
But you had us both nailed within like the first 10 minutes. And it was like, wow, I feel this is like pretty bad. But also, it kind of aired out all the laundry.
What did you feel like was noticed?
I feel like some of my concerns were validated, like this, this has been an ongoing problem, but also, hey, you're also needing to do XYZ, like especially with the whole mom involvement, which obviously we're not speaking now. So,
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully that'll get in a better place. But okay, so you were, I guess, kind of shocked at what we were talking about initially.
yes.
Surprised.
Surprised, but I think because of how much you were able to be like, well, these are your patterns, these are where you're having the issues, this is where the behavior needs to modify, that it's almost like we kind of jumped ahead 10 years in our marriage. Like people take a while to figure this out. And we hear it all the time from couples like, oh, we're working on this and this and this. And it's like, well, we did 3 sessions and we figured that
Done. Okay.
but, you regress. So
Sure.
there's always regression in that. And, we can recognize in ourselves where we're like, we have conversations and we're like, yeah, this is a regression we talked about. This is something that needed to change. And we,
Well, I'm not even sure I'd call it a regression because that's kind of heavy. The thing is, whenever you learn anything, did you ever practice an instrument, learn a musical instrument when you were a kid?
for a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Well, what was the instrument?
A piano.
Oh, me too. Okay. So, well, you very well know then with piano, you have to practice a lot before you get good. It just, you don't sit down and play Flight of the Bumblebee,
No.
right? So, but things like in a relationship that happens too. So as you're going along, you maybe have some new skills, or you have some new awareness, and you're implementing and kind of practicing it. It's very, very normal for you to need a little more practice,
Hmm.
is all.
Yeah.
So that's good. But we had two important things to pick up on. One was mother-in-law involvement.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And the other one was, how would you phrase it?
Oh, from that, um,
That you were really wanting to fix.
from the first session.
Caleb's smiling. Yeah. Go ahead, jump in.
It
The
really
hurt feelings?
it's hurt feelings.
It's not the what was in or what was said, it was what was received. Wasn't that what you?
Yes. Well, okay. So that brings up thank you for teeing that up for me. I appreciate it, Haley.
Okay.
In communication, it's very important to understand that it does not matter what you intended or meant or thought you said. The real meaning of your communication is what is received and the feedback you get or the response you get. So the example I always use, if I said, gosh, Haley, I really like your earrings. I'm sure that doesn't sound like a compliment to you. But see, from my perspective, I may have totally meant it as one. Okay. Now, actually, they're very cute earrings, as everyone can see, but it did not seem that way to you. So if the response I get after I make a compliment is, what's wrong with my earrings? Then clearly that's not what I had hoped for, right? So I'm the speaker. You see, a communication is somebody speaks and somebody receives. So as the speaker, it's my job to change that, because one way or another, maybe it was my body language that was off, maybe it was my tone of voice, maybe my word choice or whatever, but you clearly did not receive that as a compliment. So it's my job to make sure it is, to rewind or come at it a different way. Okay. So this business of communication, and that gets to what you were saying, Caleb, about, your mouth going faster than your brain was in gear. That's another way of saying you didn't have a filter. And that's another way of saying you didn't have your eye on the outcome. Okay. Because in fact, everything we do and everything we say should be pointed toward one of our goals. In this case, having a loving, safe, wonderful, respectful, great marriage. Everything we do and everything we say should be pointed toward that goal. And if it is not, it's either irrelevant or damaging. So, you with me on that one?
I am.
Good. Okay. So what was it like from your perspective in that first meeting?
It was actually very validating, the first meeting.
Really?
Most of it, I say most of it, was actually pointed towards Haley. And that's really what kept me coming back. because I was not on board with going at the first point. The first
Tell me about that.
I came because she was going to spend the money anyways, and I'm like, well, if we're going to waste money, I might as
I might as well be there to see it lighting on fire. Okay.
and so like I took a little bit the first session, but it was really the second session where you focused on me more,
Right.
because I mean there's a lot of issues to work on between the two of us, and an hour is a relatively short session at the end of the day. And so the first session was very validating, and the second session for me was very humbling.
In what way?
Because you really do nail people. Like, we don't really have to give you much of a backstory. Like, you nail people really, really fast.
Well,
And
nail is such a fierce word. Understand your patterns. Would that be fair?
I'm gonna go with nail.
Because I know. Did it? Well, honestly, here, really, truly, did it feel like I nailed you in terms of you felt defensive? Because that would not be my
No.
intention.
I mean, my my instant, action is always to go defensive, but also at that point, I because of the first session, I understood we were there for counseling, we were there to fix things. So I'm sure I was a little defensive, but at the same time, I didn't really need to be. You were very, very good about putting things in terminology that I was going to be able to relate with, and I
Right.
mean that
It's
I
very
know,
important.
especially with the amount of guys I talk to about the specific type of counseling, like it's hard to get through to us. It's very hard to get through to us because we rarely want to be there.
See, my perspective is just the opposite. See, from my perspective, I know that the behind the scenes truth is most often it's the men that enjoy it more than the women. That's normally what happens because I do speak guy. I do. I do. And I would say instead of nailing, maybe we could say I was accurate.
Very
Is
accurate.
that fair?
Yeah.
Is that fair? Okay. Because obviously in no way I don't in any way mean to put people off or make them uncomfortable. But I do feel it's important to be accurate and just getting the patterns on the table because we all have them. We are all in patterns of one sort or another. And the great news is I do not see those as, you have a disorder or you're dysfunctional or, something like that. A pattern in the end is just a habit. And habits can be changed very quickly. And you can choose whether to have it or not. This is how it goes. After you felt I was accurate, we're going with that one. Okay. After you felt I was accurate, then what? What was the takeaway? What changed?
It was a lot of work, really. It took a long time post all the sessions to really come to terms with the specific thing. For me was the phrase, "It's what was perceived and not what was said." I mean, to date, I still struggle with that because
Sure.
you really can't control what other people are feeling and how they're going to relate to
Right.
things, and especially in today's society. That can be a tough one.
Yes.
But I mean, it definitely took months and months of work in order to come to terms with and end up not fixing, but getting a lot better about it. And I mean, at the end of the day, obviously, I wanted to fix my marriage.
Of course. Okay. So, what are you most proud of Haley for doing or changing?
I would actually have to go with probably the most recent time that we came. Like, I know she's definitely still struggling with it, but after that one session, she has made a big effort to let go of some of the problems associated with not being in contact with her mother. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously, the first three sessions, we did a lot, we covered a lot, but I know that is hands down one of the hardest things that she has probably had to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that's gonna have some long term effects, and she is taken it in stride very, very well.
Lovely. So, I'm going to ask you the same question in a second, what you're most proud of him for doing, but I want to touch on this idea of daughter pattern versus wife pattern. We did talk a little bit about
And that
that.
was in some of the early sessions as
Correct.
well. So trying to work on that.
What was your sense of that when I explained what the difference was? And just for the viewers, a a daughter pattern, or it could be a son pattern, is when you're in a marriage and you, as the wife, let's say, are in a daughter pattern with your family of origin, usually mom, although not necessarily, but usually mom, where it means that your mother's influence, your mother's approval means more to you or has more leverage on you emotionally than your husband's. Okay. So the person you want, if you're a girl in the situation, the person you want to look to and get the approval of is your husband first and foremost. Now, it's nice to have approval of other people, including mom, and that's all lovely and fine. But there should not be a choice. And if there is a choice, you need to go for the husband, and vice versa. If someone was in a son pattern, it means his family of origin or his mom has more leverage on him emotionally than his wife, and that's not good. So, it's a pattern you get into with really no awareness you're in it, right? And if you're a good person, you're trying to make everybody happy,
Yes. Which you just can't do.
which you really can't do. Eventually you gotta have priorities.
And I think the hard part is they never liked him when I was dating him. They were
Oh.
mad about the engagement.
Uh-oh.
They were like kind of resigned to the marriage. And it was like I kept trying to feel like I had to prove like, no, like I married the right person. Like I don't regret this. Like this is good. Like you just need to see that part of him. And then sometimes he'd say things and I'm like, well, that's not gonna help me out. So
You're not making my case for me.
So, I mean, that part was hard because it felt like not only was I like, I wanted her to like him, but like I
Sure,
wanted the
sure.
rest of my family to be like, this is not an unhealthy relationship I'm in. Like, he's a good person, he's a good father. And so when all this kind of blew up and over, like she kind of attacked him as a person in the text message. And I was like, no, that's not right. And it's unfortunate, but I think he told me, he's like, none of the people I've ever dated, their parents ever liked me. So he's like, he's over it.
He shoots, he scores.
So my biologic dad, he likes him just fine. And, we get along with that side, which
That's nice.
it's just in the long run, I think the biggest takeaway is like, well, they're not going to have a relationship with their grandkids. So that was another big part that was kind
That's
of
their
challenging.
choice, though.
Yeah.
That's their choice. And a very unfortunate one. So, what we get to see in a situation like this is how much, for an example, being a mom, meaning your mom, can go on to infinity when actually you have an end of your job. You're going to have an end of your job even with little boo-boo in there and your son. You're not supposed to be a mom forever. A mom is something you do. It's not who you are. A wife is who you are forever, but not a mom. And so what we find in general, and I don't know your specific situation with your mom, but in general, what happens is the mom never cuts the cord, never gets over that job, and it becomes her whole identity. So instead of partnering, for an example, with her husband or, with family and friends and activities and hobbies and whatnot, she just continually has to be super involved with her adult children who no longer need a mom. Right? And if she does that and continues treating you like a child, meaning enforcing her rules, her thoughts, her opinions, her way of doing things on you, you're a grown woman married with 1.5 kids. You don't need a mommy anymore. So when you get married, the job of everybody around you, no matter if they share DNA with you or not, and I'm especially suspicious of people who do share DNA with you, but everybody's job is to support your union. And people either will do that or they will not do that. Their choice. And if they do not do that, it's not that you never see them or cut them out, but you have a distance that you don't allow access to you. You don't allow people access that are going to do harm. Seems kind of straightforward. Military background, you would understand that very well. There's reasons why they put up fences around, posts and yes.
Yeah, that's more to keep people in.
Well, that can be true too, but
I think you did a really good job with your parents, like initially, because even your friends too, because it's basically both Christian background, but, apparently being Catholic is a lot different than being Southern Baptist. And
oh my goodness, yes. Oh, it's almost like there's two gods, Yeah, I know. Yeah, I get that. That's true.
And I went to a private Christian school, and being like one of the only Catholic people there, that was kind of interesting perspective because it's like Catholics do this and it's like we don't. And just, and then seeing that like in his side of the family, like, oh, they do this and it's like we don't. So, but they've come a long way. They actually volunteered to come to mass when I was pregnant with Jace at
how
one point.
sweet.
So
How sweet.
they're like, we'll go to church with you. And I'm like,
See, well, that's supporting. They don't have to become Catholics or, become vegan or vegetarian or anything else just to
No.
enjoy vegetables, They could do that and be supportive. And that's really lovely.
And I think it's interesting because the priest that married us, his hometown in Mexico is very close to his mother's. So they had that in common. And I think they did talk a little bit at the wedding.
Hmm.
So
Nice.
it
Very
was good to
nice.
have that perspective.
Yeah. So it's in the end, it's always a blending, isn't it? It's always a blending. So, what are you proud of him for accomplishing or doing or changing?
I think, you know, taking that initiative and coming, even though he was resistant at first, because
No, he
and
figured it was a complete waste of time. Let's be fair.
not only coming,
And
but
money.
like
And money. That's right.
but attempting to like be like, I'm gonna get something out of this and I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna apply it. And even now, sometimes we'll revisit the it's not what's said, it's it's intended. And he's like, you're just gonna be upset. And then he'll come back later and he'll be like, I'm sorry.
Aw.
But he's, this is and we try and get through it because I'm like, well, I probably overreacted a little bit, so some of that was on me. And then we try and work. So, but we need that space initially. We need that little blow up, and then we come back and we're like, okay, we were
Especially,
both a little wrong.
yeah, and that's a good way of handling it. But especially now, we do have to take into consideration she is preggers, and that she is a hormonal soup right now and will be for quite a while.
It's actually not
And
too
that
bad.
changes a lot.
She's been very reasonable.
Good.
More reasonable than the first go.
Mm. Well, it's
So,
still fairly
well,
early.
we know what to expect, I think too. But there's definitely some things where I'm just like, was I telling you? I saw like this fluffy keychain. I'm like, I just started crying. I'm like, it's so fluffy, and he's like, yeah, you're definitely pregnant.
So that brings up a really interesting point. Thank you for reminding me. You know, we talk a lot about communication and how to make that better and all that, but there are so many things that can affect that beyond our control. And hormones are not the least of them. So, and you don't have to just be pregnant, just a woman cycling goes through so many hormonal fluctuations that it's literally like four different people. And some of them are not necessarily nice, and probably at least one of them is kind of cray cray. So from a guy's standpoint,
Said the regular one.
yeah, the regular one. So from a guy's standpoint, it can be a lot about just managing crazy fluctuations in mood and attitude and sensitivity, right? Another thing that can affect how you communicate and how you connect, of course, are things like everybody goes through, like blood sugar
Oh yeah.
issues, blood sugar, sleep deprivation. As soon as you have a baby, you usually go into a pretty serious sleep deprivation, and that changes everything. So this whole process of communication has to be viewed from the standpoint of let's consider the circumstances too before we get, too far down the road of being right or being upset or being resentful. Sometimes you just got to take a breath and go, okay, well, that'll be fine.
We all get hangry, even our 2-year-old.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
He comes
especially a
by it
2
honest, but he comes
especially
by it
2.
honest, so
Sure.
so
Yeah,
when we're all mad
hangry is not fun.
when we're all mad at the same time, we're like, we probably should eat something.
Where's the candy bar? No, not a candy bar. Okay, healthy foods. So, one of the things I taught you was genius thinking, which is the ability to look forward and to notice only what could be or what's possible. I'm sure from your military training, they taught you a lot about that. Well, they should have.
Should have.
Should have. Looking forward, which is probably something you do now better than you used to, would you say?
Yeah.
What does that look like from your standpoint, Caleb? What do you see in the future? What do you want to have happen?
Right now, I'm very worried about the very near future because I'm about to graduate. So I'm hyper focused on that in order to determine what we're really doing in our distant future. Um, and so that we had game plans, and some of them have started going out the window because we have no idea what the next couple months and actually the next 5 years is bringing.
So it's all an adventure, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
A little bit of an adventure. So my job is pretty portable. So if he ends up, we've talked about that too. Like where are places where we would be willing to end up? Where are places where we would like to stay? Or, are we trying to stay in this area? Are we going to go to Orlando? Every time it sounds nice, but then every time we're driving through Orlando, I'm like, I cannot live here.
Yeah, it's kind of busy.
It is
It's
so
kind
busy.
of busy.
Like you said, there's a lot of things up in the air, especially with schooling, especially if he's getting an advanced degree. So there is some changes going on at my work. They're talking about, corporate buy-in. So that might be in my future in the next couple of years. So figuring out,
Well, let's talk about the idea that what is expected tends to be realized, because that's a true thing. Okay. And a lot of times people with a lot going on, clearly that would be you, they can get very worried, or let's say tilting toward being concerned rather than excited. And at the end of the day, it usually goes better if you are expecting things to go well and then have a little patience to let them play out that way. Because real confidence in your life and yourself happens when you know that it's all going to work out. Especially from a faith-based perspective, we don't get to pick the road necessarily that we're on, but we know it's the right one.
like, it's going to
Yeah.
all end up okay. It'll work itself out because it
It
always
will.
does.
It always does. So I think that's the essence of having faith, is you can just sort of take a breath and relax, and you realize you don't necessarily, you can plan as best you can and, try and do the right thing, but in the end, it's going to happen the way it happens. All right. Well, as usual, I like to start every session, and I did off camera, just so you know, with what it is they would like to accomplish when people come in to see me. So you came up with some wonderful idea of something you wanted to talk about or work through.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we are struggling with is being supportive of each other in our ideas and ventures. I am a very entrepreneurial person, and
Mm-hmm.
my biggest obstacle is always her, actually. It is
In
never
what way?
um eh, not being supportive of it. Period. It's always either this is going to go wrong or you can't do this, or th- th- there's always an excuse not to do the thing. Um, and there's actually been at least 4 or 5 different instances where there was too much pushback. I didn't end up pursuing the idea, and then a few years later, somebody came out doing the exact same thing on a large scale, basically the way I talked about doing it. And so whenever we were looking at topics, it's just kind of like that might be something we might be able to talk about.
Okay. Sounds like a great topic. I love it. What say you about this?
So remember kind of earlier back in the conversation, we talked about we were both doing independent businesses back before we moved out here. So I had a practice and I was working 4 days a week doing my thing and then 3 days in an established place to make sure we had a source of income, which I got a little bit of flack for because I had to take a pay cut for that. So I was working really hard. Well, he was like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, I want to start. Do we go into specifics about the type of business?
If you wish.
Would you
You can.
say like kind of a gunsmithing business? And he needed a very large piece of equipment for this. Like, how much was that Haas
It was
machine?
$36,000.
Mm.
So that was a big venture for that. And he didn't make money with it. And he put it back into the business or he bought things for that. So everything I was doing, like I was being very frugal because I didn't know how taxes were going to work. I didn't know how much we were going to actually have to pay out. And I ended up doing very decently for myself for that. And he did well, but like none of that went into the bank account. Like it all was fed back into the growing the business. So we grew it very quickly and then we ended up moving. So we had to sell or figure out how to expensively move this giant piece of equipment. And I just kind of, and we didn't have a lot of time because we were long distance too. So we were both, that was kind of a tough spot. And so coming out here, he's like, well, I want to start this kayak business where we rent out kayaks to the beach and we're going to start with just a couple. And I'm like, okay. And I come up with the logistics. I'm like, well, how are you going to do this? You have to do insurance. I'm like, you have a baby on the way. Are you going to take our like little toddler to all these places? You don't know these
Sure.
people. So things like that where and then I guess get a little shy because I feel like every venture that he wants to do, it's this large, expensive piece of equipment. And not just one, but like multiple. And he's like, no, no, it'll be like years and years down. But I've heard the story, this is going to be years and years down. And then 2 months later, we have a
I want to
21-foot
do
boat
it.
in the yard,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay. I get it. Okay.
That was actually you.
I'm gonna
Okay.
still blame him.
Yeah. All right. All right. So a couple of things. So I'm going to show you or point out a couple of different patterns that you guys are in. Again, they're not good or bad. They're just patterns that make this issue happen. All right. First of all, In NLP meta programs, we learn some really fascinating things about ourselves and each other, one of which is your chunk size preference. Chunk size referring to the chunk size of information that you like to deal with. So I know that Caleb, for an example, joins me in the chunk size preference of he likes to start big picture, like a big picture concept, and then kind of work down into the details and figure out the specifics of how to do it. He might even have a little tendency to sort of want to stay in the big picture,
Yeah, that's accurate.
actually. Okay. Some people, that's the only place they want to be is the big picture. They don't want to deal with the details at all. It makes their eyes cross. Now, Haley, on the other hand, is the opposite, of course. She likes to start with the details where she feels safe, and then she can kind of work up into the big picture and see how it all works. Right? Now, neither one of these are wrong, but now that you know this about each other, huzzah, it will change or should change how you communicate. So, my husband, I have the opposite situation also. My husband tends to be, detail up into big chunk. So, for an example, if I want to say, "Oh my God, I just found out about this great place we can go to in Italy. They have this and they have that, and we can go here, and then from there we can go here," and I'm like all over the place, he will be overwhelmed, and I'm not. That's not going to be a good communication. What I have to do is start with, okay, well, in October, I think we probably have a couple of weeks that aren't encumbered right now. And because we have that, maybe, so I build it from there. That will be much more palatable to him and he will go along with what I'm saying better. Okay. Now, the reverse is true for you. If you come to him with the details and especially concerns, that is so raining on his parade. Listen, you guys have a great team because somebody does have to pay attention to the what ifs. Somebody does have to pay more attention to the details, right? And the watch outs. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's an order and sequence thing. You can't start there. You can't start there. You have to just in your head go, boom. What does it look like in the end? Wow. Because then you're going to have his absolute attention. Make sense? Can you see that's true?
Yes.
Now, she says like, "Oh, I don't want to do it that way." So, this is a conversation about behavioral flexibility. Behavioral flexibility. So, he or she with the greatest behavioral flexibility controls the interaction. That's a true story. Okay. He or she with the greatest behavioral flexibility controls the interaction. So what we don't want to do is say, "Well, I'm this way, whatever this way is, and that's the only way I can communicate or talk." No. You guys are both very smart. And this is about being behaviorally flexible, getting out of your one pattern. So you can be just as good at this as you are at this, would be behaviorally flexible rather than just, "I'm only this." Make sense? So it's not that everything you say has to start big picture or everything you say has to start in details, but you have to be very, very aware of your audience. Because again, the real meaning of your communication isn't what you think or what you want or what you need or whatever. It is actually what the other person responds that makes it. Okay? So that's one thing. You're having what we call a mismatch in connection and communication because you're starting from two different places. And at the end of the day, in the big picture, we do have to get down in some level of details to get organized and know what the heck's going on. And at the end of the day, at some point, you have to see what the big point is of all the details you're so worried about, right? So it ends up being a really good blend or balance. Okay. The other pattern I want you to know that you're in is you are very security based. Safety and security is very, very important to you. So for her, being consistent, dependable, predictable, huge value to her. Huge, huge, huge value. So that does not describe an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right? So again, one is not right or wrong, good or bad, better or worse. They're just different. So the whole point of being really successful in any partnership you're in, particularly a marriage, is that you focus on the solutions that accommodate both people. That's the key to it. Because no two people are exactly the same anyway, So at the end of the day, you have to do that. Now, Caleb, on the other hand, is much more freedom oriented. He has a bit of a membership thing going on too. But at the end of the day, I think he's mostly freedom oriented, which means to him, clutter is acceptable. He doesn't have to. Oh, he's a neatnik. Oh, is that true? You a little obsessive about clutter?
I'm bad about leaving my stuff around for sure, but
Bad about
working
leaving
on
your
it.
stuff around. Okay.
But working on it very
So
hard actually.
clutter of your stuff is acceptable.
It's not. It drives me crazy.
Not crazy enough.
I'm very ADD.
It's well, that's an anxiety issue. That's kind of a different story. But let's go back to the fact that with regard to your stuff, being kind of a slob is okay. And you're working on it.
It's not, but I'm bad about it.
It's okay, meaning it happens.
It happens.
That's your current situation.
Yeah.
i.e., clutter is acceptable. Okay, it may be something you want to fix, but that's kind of how it goes now. You don't necessarily have a strong desire for closure. You're wanting to be more flexible about where this takes you to get to some ultimate goal or picture that you have in your head.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so you want closure. You want to know and be sure and be definite and have it written down in black and white, for sure. Concrete. He's okay if it's not.
Yeah.
Now, that's an advantage, you see, because if you're going to be good at being an entrepreneur, as an example, there are a whole lot of things you can't button down, and you have to be okay with, being flexible and just kind of going with the flow or figuring it out as you get there or whatever the case may be. It's part of what makes a good entrepreneur, that you can shuck and jive with whatever's happening and still end up okay. So as you notice this about each other, your job, Caleb, talking to you, your job is to sort of tee it up for Haley, whatever it is you're talking about doing or, wanting to change or figuring out, tee it up in a way that there is some safety, some level of emotional or financial safety that occurs. Now, you have to have your awareness on that to figure it out, right? Because that's not your normal gig. But getting excited about new projects or excited about making changes, that's all fine and dandy. Just don't forget to scoop up, somehow she needs to kind of go, oh, okay. Whew.
I actually did that the other week with one of them.
Did you? Good. Tell me about that.
She may be mad whenever I say this, but she is a veterinarian. And so at the clinic she works in, they have an orthopedic specialist. And what I have been on for probably about 2 years now, actually, which is one of the businesses that somebody else took semi-large scale, but I don't like how they're doing their thing. Anyways, they do a lot with the orthopedic specialist there. They do a lot of things called a TPLO. It's equivalent like to a torn ACL for humans, for people that don't
My
know.
border collie,
Of course, border collie.
of course, we just went through that 3 months ago. Yes, and I had that done with another pair of border collies too. I'm very familiar with TPLO.
And so I am about to be a mechanical engineer.
Ooh,
And so what I have been working on in my spare time for literally the last 2 years is figuring out more advanced ways to make prosthetics for animals, which
Oh,
actually
how awesome.
includes knee braces. There's
Yes.
not a whole lot of science behind how well they work that's starting to come out. But so I've been pushing towards talking to her boss in the clinic about seeing if they want to incorporate that into their practice,
Nice.
because the general consensus is that it does help the non-torn limb.
Yes.
It, it, it's
That's
it,
what I was most afraid of with all that weight on the other one.
and so
If
it
that
doesn't.
goes out, then you're screwed
Well, you're 50% likely once you do the one to.
Yeah, you're 50% more likely to tear it within a year, 18 months, something along those lines.
because it takes so much punishment because they just
And
can't put any weight on that leg.
and while a university hasn't done these studies, there's been a handful of independent places that have said it's about 5 years instead once you put a brace on the non-surgery side.
Nice.
So I've been barking down this avenue, and
Lovely.
at one point I asked her, and she told me how many TPLOs that he does in a year,
A lot.
and yeah, it came
A
out to a
lot.
lot.
Yes, it is a lot.
And so that I was actually basically like, well, you're going to have probably this conversion between the people that are doing it. And whenever you calculate that, it came out to a lot of people relatively minimal risk, actually, because the equipment that's necessary there's two different ways to do it. There's the budget friendly way and there's like the all in way. And so I've given her both sides of it.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Now, wait a minute. I just have to back up for a minute. So you were crying over a fuzzy keychain. How the hell do you go to work every day? Everything you deal with is fuzzy.
Let's see. Well, it's like that kitty keychain on my purse right now. And I saw it when I was at a conference and like I don't know, there's something about it, but
It was just it's a silly question. I don't know. It's just I don't know how you do your job if a fuzzy kitty keychain sets you off. But anyway, that sounds like fascinating research and a fascinating product. And I know for sure because that was my biggest concern with all that weight on that good leg. How long is that going to last? And mine is an 11-year-old dog, now 12. So that's a very serious thing. So I wish you great good luck with that, and I hope that just flies
I appreciate that.
because that would be exceptionally awesome. Do you have a company doing this yet?
No, not yet. That's kind of my big thing is I wanted to graduate first before I took on, something this big
Well, maybe
in
we
an
need to have
actual capacity.
maybe we need to have a follow-up podcast in maybe a year to see if that's actually happening, and then we'll just ever so casually mention the name of your company. Is what I'm thinking. But anyhow, okay. So part of being very safety, security oriented is being very detail oriented. And not only, well, both of you would be very detail oriented with your educations for sure. When you're working out things amongst yourselves, just understand his proclivity is going to be to go big picture down into details. And it's okay if you start in the reverse. Once you know that, I think, and you need to scoop up the fact he may need a bigger picture view so he knows you get his idea and he doesn't feel defensive.
I think some of that with that idea he had that he was like, well, you can be the vet, like input on this. And I'm like, I think I need like more training for that. This isn't really my specialty. Like I do a lot more general practice. And I felt kind of inadequate for the task. So when he's like, well, you can be the vet on board, it's like, well, what if I screw it up? Like, what
I know,
if,
I know, but you always worry about screwing it up. So let me give you a little trick, may I? Okay, and this is actually something I do
Okay.
for real. A long time ago, I figured out that it would be really wise if no matter what my husband asked me, I said, yeah, sure, absolutely, you bet. No matter what.
We would have bought a bigger boat.
Now, wait a minute, I'm not done. So, Haley, why would I say that? Why would I decide to do that?
Because that sounds very suspicious when you say something like that. Like, really? You're just like it. I don't
He
know.
doesn't
Like,
think he's not suspicious.
I don't know. I'd be suspicious if he's like, yeah, sure, whatever.
If he did, yes, but I'm saying with you did, because there's a different energy with what, because you're the girl in the situation. So if he's asking you, hey, what about this? Or what do you think about that? And you go, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. What would his reaction be?
Suspicion.
Okay, well, let's say you get over the suspicion. Why would I do that? Why would I answer that way? What am I going for? What's my outcome?
You're maintaining a positive attitude, basically.
Yes. And how does that help?
You're more likely to, when you suggest something, that he's going to be receptive to it because you're already sounding
No,
like
if
you're on
he
board.
asks me something, I say, sure, you bet, no problem. Why would I do that? It's an out and out manipulation. I'm just, going to admit. No idea. Okay. Well, I'm suggesting it because I'd like you to try and experiment with it. So here's what I'm going for.
Oh no!
I know. Well, this is about change, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. Frequently, I say, yeah, sure, no problem. You got it. And I add, but I probably need to wait until tomorrow to do that, or I'll be able to get to that. I can't do it now, but I'll get to it this weekend, or we could probably fit that in next month sometime.
So there's caveats.
Often. But see, he doesn't really pay attention to the caveats. Because when a husband's asking a wife something, particularly in that configuration, when a husband's asking a wife something, he's anticipating getting a no. So if he got not only a yes, but an enthusiastic yes, it would throw him off and he'd go, wow, awesome. Okay. So now in his brain, what I've created is, yay, this is great. Okay. And the little add-ons, the caveats, he's like, yeah, whatever. Because he got the yes.
Yeah.
Now, notice it would be just as accurate if he asked me whatever he asked me and I went, no, I need to do that later today, or no, can't do that till this weekend. No, we'd have to do that next month. It would be exactly as accurate. But if I preface it with a no, it changes everything. Do you understand?
Yes.
Now, just having, you're our resident token guy here in the room. Well, you are too, Zach. We don't want to, sorry, no offense. So, Zach, would you be more excited to hear yes and then a caveat, or no and here's why and the caveat?
Yes.
The yes first. That would mean a lot, wouldn't it? Caleb, what say you?
I would agree.
So that would be easier and better, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
And it's not that we ignore the caveats are going to happen, trust me. But they aren't the central feature. And it's like you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. It's a honey response. You bet, sure. And then there's usually there's some way of making it happen with some number of caveats that I'm happy with.
That's fair.
So it's not like I say yes and we drop everything, and make it happen. Yes, but I'd really like to look at our budget first, if that's okay. Yes, but I'd really like to get this paid off and then maybe think about that.
So it's like the movie Yes Man. Have you seen that?
Yes. It's a little trick you could use or not as you like. So could all of you. The power of saying yes. So it is a power. It is an out-and-out manipulation. But see, loving someone is not about how you feel. It's about how you make them feel. And I think that's kind of a nice way of making a guy feel like, yeah, you're in agreement. Because when a girl is in agreement, it's an entirely different experience for a man than if she is in disagreement. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yes. An entirely different experience. And it's so radically different, most women have really no clue how radically different it is. So if you're going to play at a higher level of the game, then you always seem like you're in agreement.
Okay.
Doesn't have to necessarily be so, but you do have to appear as if you're in agreement, because that will just get you farther than if you're seen as not.
That is going to take a lot of mental remembering and changing for
Not
that.
really. I think it's harder what you're doing now.
Really?
Yes, I do. Because when and this is just a default, right? It's just, again, a habit, a pattern. When you're in a default of being negative instead of positive or disagreeing instead of agreeing, that sort of a thing, that's natural for you to respond in that way. So it's easy that way, but it's not easy in terms of the effect. So the outcome, my way, is easy and very different.
Yeah.
The outcome your way it'll be easy to do initially because it's sort of what you do without thinking. It's unconscious. But then you're going to have to put up with a husband who now has been out of shape because you've been disagreeable, and it could lead to some arguments, or he doesn't feel understood or doesn't feel like you're supportive. Ooh, I think that was what you started off talking about. Ooh.
I feel like it's like the cat response versus the dog response. You ask a cat something, it's like,
Whatever.
But a dog's like, yeah, let's just do it. Yeah. I'll just think of that in my head. Okay, the dog response.
That would be that's a great analogy. Yes, a great analogy. A dog response for sure. And it doesn't hurt if you wiggle your butt either. Just saying. Just saying. So, in order to be supportive of each other, which was the topic you brought up, which I think is an awesome one, in recap, you do kind of need to keep in mind these things, these differences, these inherent differences, some of which we can change, some of which we really can't. You're being a freedom-oriented guy with a overlay of a little anxiety issue that makes you compulsively look at things and kind of get anxious about stuff. That's pretty much who you are, although the anxiety could be manipulated better. And you're going to be basically a security-oriented person who needs consistency and needs to kind of have your feet on the ground with what's going on and to feel safe and be able to take action. Both of them are fine, and I don't see any reason why you can't incorporate that. And then in just your general communication patterns, just understand she likes details. She likes to start in details. You'll suck her right in if you get details. It'll be easy.
I've gotten pretty detail heavy before.
Good. Yeah, I bet it worked well.
It did not.
Uh-oh. Well, if there's other things besides just detail, that wouldn't work.
I think a lot of it comes back to financial talks too, and like time frames. Because like I said, sometimes you'll be like, well, no, like just bear in mind this is going to be a couple years out, and then
Then it's
2 months
happening
later,
next
and it's
Tuesday.
like,
Okay. That was actually one other thing I wanted to talk about. We already know that Your goals are always more important than your feelings. We know this. And we know that outcome is everything. So again, everything you do and everything you say has to be pointed towards some goal. You as a couple, like all couples, should have very specific and well agreed to financial goals and plans. That's one of the worst areas to have to make unilateral decisions. That really is. So and now that we know that your risk tolerance is much higher, it would not, well, of course, it would not seem, it probably wouldn't even seem like much of a risk on some of the things you do that she's going, oh my God. Right? So it's a very different perception. Now, it doesn't mean that you're right and she's wrong, because who knows where the truth is in the middle. But you have a lower risk tolerance. He has a higher risk tolerance. That's lovely. But again, it needs to be blended, like blended. Blue and green makes a lovely shade of teal. It needs to be teal. And really, if you're smart, you don't make unilateral decisions when it comes to money. That money issues like not having agreement is one of the top 2 or 3 reasons people who really love each other end up in divorce court. And we do not want you ending up in divorce court.
We're in agreement. We won't. There's only one way out, and it's not.
To kill you, to kill him? Really? Okay, well, that's a common one. I've heard that before. So what you the simple thing is, you do not have a detailed plan and agreement for money, for a, let's say, a comprehensive financial plan. And that's not just budget, light bill, gas
I
bill.
don't know if you remember this, but we actually started a new one literally last week. I started talking about things.
Mm,
Remember the whole Excel spreadsheet I was
there
trying to
you
explain
go.
to you?
Yes.
Yes, we
There
actually, we
you
actually
go.
started a new one like last week, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Well, you started a new one. She needs to buy in.
I mean, we don't really make a lot of big unilateral decisions, like financially. Like we'll talk about.
Well, it's unilateral or speeding up the time frame. The point is, you have normal household budget and expenditures. Then you might have, you had things like education, and then you've got hopes and plans and dreams. You've got adventures, you've got travel, you've got new car, retirement for sure. So when I say financial plan, I mean from where you are now, actually past your death, because you have children. So
I
that
was working on probably
big
2/3 of that.
that big picture plan, of course, it's subject to change, and the further out you go, the fuzzier it gets. But it's nice to sort of have a basic roadmap, so that, first of all, with regard to retirement, you guys both know and agree on the size of the pile of money you need. That's your FU money that you can quit work if you choose to. Now, you both have very interesting careers. It might be you choose to work till you're 102. I don't know. That's fine. But there is some, but you never give up puppy breath. Come on.
So
I'm just kidding. But the point is, there's some size of the pile of money that is sufficient for you to go, okay, we don't have to work anymore. And whether you do or not is up to you. But knowing what that pile is, how big that is, what it needs to look like, is part of what allows you to back up to now and then make your plan. Because this is an important feature of your overall plan.
we do talk about that. Like I feel like we talk a lot more about retirement stuff and like how much and accounting for inflation than we do like, okay, in 10 years we want to take a family vacation to New Zealand.
Lovely.
What do we need to do for that?
Right.
So
But all of that needs to be spelled out. So you really should have this year plan, the next year plan, as far out as you can. I think that's a good idea. And then your plan needs to accommodate like pocket money, discretionary spending, and projects like equipment.
I'm actually pretty good about that.
The look on her face says maybe not.
She doesn't like to read my Excel spreadsheets.
Well, again, this is not my Excel spreadsheet. It is our Excel spreadsheet. So you would want to come up with whatever it is on our Excel spreadsheet that she can get into and agree with and understand and use. Because if it's only yours, that's not enough.
Means you have to read it.
Yes. Well, and you would have
Yes.
to make a commitment because I know you like things spelled out and
Yeah.
definite and predictable. I'm talking about you have a predictable agreement on expenditures, and it should incorporate large pieces of equipment, apparently, or boats or whatever the heck that is. So, and you both be in agreement about it is the thing, and the timing. So if like you want to do that sooner. It was 2 years and now it's 2 months. That has to be agreed upon too.
Yeah.
So having that, the intricacies of that I think would be very important. And then you would feel very supported. Yes.
Hmm.
If you knew,
Probably would go better too for like business expenditures because we can be like, well, it's going to come out of this or this, but
correct.
things are going to
And
change.
plan for
Yeah.
taxes and, all those sorts of things. Sure.
We got to do our taxes today.
I think having I did mine a couple weeks ago. So having a definite plan, I think, is very, very important, is the point. So if you feel like you are supported, you are supporting each other financially because you implement a little bit of a plan, and you now understand your personality types a little bit and the needs that you have that you can accommodate more lovingly and patiently, that would probably make you feel more supported. Yes.
That's
Would
just the
that-
goal.
Hmm?
I said, which is the goal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So would that sort of accommodate your...
I believe so.
Very good. Anything else we left off in the way you wanted to be supported?
No.
I love it when a plan comes together. Okay. Well, then, I thank you both ever so much for this wonderful chat. I'm sure it'll be very, very helpful to a lot of people. Good luck with the rest of your pregnancy and your little baby girl. We'll look forward to the news
Baby
on that.
sister.
Baby sister. Yeah, her name is Baby Sister. Yes. And maybe we'll catch you in a year when you have your company in that great TPLO brace. Oh,
We'll
I think
find
that's
out.
just so fun. And if we do, then we're putting out the name. Okay. So until then, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.